Welcome to the Aboriginal channel. On this episode, we're going to tie in Freemasonry to the assimilation of the Indian people and the stealing of their land and natural resources. So in a previous video, we talked about Brunswick. So right here it says Brunswick was abandoned during the Civil War when citizens were ordered to evacuate. The city, like many others in the South, suffered from post-war depression after one of the nation's largest lumber mills began operation on nearby St. Simon's Island. Economic prosperity returned. So they saying after the Civil War, they start cutting trees down on St. Simon's Island. Then it says rail lines were constructed from Brunswick to inland Georgia, which stimulated a sawmill boom, said to average 1 mill every 2 miles, along with new industrial corridor. So they started cutting down trees and built rail lines after the Civil War. Although the rail lines began to be constructed all over the Northeast and Southeast by the 1830s. So I read that right there to basically say that that's how the sequence of events went, and that the Civil War was not based upon slavery, because the slavery came after with the vagrancy laws and those Jim Crow laws where they were locking men up to do the work. But let's go back into the history. It says James Oglethorpe, well, we'll look him up right here, that in 1734, Oglethorpe established the first Masonic lodge within the British colony of Georgia, now known as Solomon's Lodge Number 1, the oldest continuously operating English constituted lodge of Freemasons in the Western Hemisphere. So in 1734, that was about a year after he showed up in Georgia. From February 1733, he showed up, and then in February 1734, he established the Masonic Lodge. Goes on to say that a couple years later, Oglethorpe's secretary was Charles Wesley, later known as hymn writer of Methodism. Now, Methodism, I said, was assimilation. Now, when you go pull up a list of historically black colleges and universities on Wikipedia, it gives you a list. And then on the list, it gives you the school, the city, the state, the date it was founded, if it's public or private, and then the religious affiliation. And when you go down on the list, the first one says the African Methodist Episcopal, 1870, South Carolina. It's Allen University. But basically, when you go down the list, you'll see that Methodism or Methodist, United Methodist, shows up more than any other religious affiliation of these schools. And that's directly connected to Oglethorpe from the 1730s and Charles Wesley right here, who was an English leader of the Methodist movement, most widely known for writing about 6,500 hymns. The way those words are put together in those hymns, if you go back and look at them, it's all about submission to the religion. And inside the book of that religion, there's things like turn the other cheek and obey authority, which is also undoubtedly within those hymns that this man is responsible for writing. But we're going to zero in right here on Jackson State University, where in Mississippi it opened in 1877 as the Natchez Seminary. The name later changed to the Mississippi Negro Training School, Jackson College for Negro Teachers, Jackson State College, and now Jackson State University. They changed the name so much because if one were to look right here at Natchez Seminary, that's all one would need to know who the original students were at that school in 1877. And that's the same way it went with the classifications of the Aboriginal. He went from being an Indian to being black, colored, Negro. By the way, colored is short for copper-colored Aboriginal. They took the copper in the Aboriginal and left the colored. But it goes on to say that the seminary operated under the auspices of the American Baptist Home Mission Society in New York. And it talks about the founding right here inside of the American Baptist Home Mission Society Wikipedia page. Talks about the Dr. Henry Lyman Morehouse, correspondent secretary of ABHMS, took the lead in forming the American Baptist Education Society in May of 1888 to promote Christian education under Baptist auspices in North America. A major achievement of the group was the founding of the University of Chicago in 1890, strongly supported by John D. Rockefeller. That's another Freemason. In addition, Dr. Morehouse, for whom Morehouse College is named, that's another HBCU, succeeded in engaging Rockefeller in major financial support for Bacon College, Spelman College, and black education in general. But let's go further down right here. It says Seeds of the Home Mission Society. When the American Baptist Home Mission Society was founded in 1832, it was patterned after the older American Baptist Foreign Mission Society. Pause. So right there, it let you know that in between 1814, when it was the foreign mission, when they were foreigners coming over here to a foreign land to teach a foreign people, in between 1814 and 1832, it became the home mission. It went from it being foreign to them to it being home to them. Understand that. And the even older Massachusetts Domestic Missionary Society in 1802, which was organized to furnish occasional preaching. Pause. So when it says the domestic missionary, that's like a bridge in between being foreign to a land, then it being domestic to you because you got kids that were born there and got married there or whatnot, to it later on becoming the home, your home. Understand the language, which was organized to furnish occasional preaching and to promote the knowledge of evangelic truth in the new settlements of the United States. Or further, its circumstances should render it proper and to evangelize the Indians and Western frontiersmen. I'll repeat that. The seed of the Home Mission Society was to promote the knowledge of evangelic truth and to evangelize the Indians and Western frontiersmen. So I'll make one more connection to show you how the Western Hemisphere or the North American continent became home to the foreign Europeans right here through this language. So it says, working with Native Americans, the Home Mission Society sent missionaries to America's frontier, including some work with Indians and Negroes. But it was not until after 1865 that the Trust for Indian Work in the United States, which had almost been extinguished during the Civil War, was transferred by the Mission Union, later the Foreign Mission and International Ministries, to the Home Mission Society. So there it is there. It says they didn't have any trust to teach the Indians, which were the Negroes, until after 1865, after the Civil War, when they transferred it from being foreign missions to home mission. But if you want to go read this stuff, it's interesting where it says work on the American frontier, work among the Native Americans, work among freemen. So for a second, we'll go over here to Hampton University, another HBCU opened in Virginia in 1868. Down here at the notable alumni, it has Booker T. Washington, who founded the Tuskegee University in Alabama. And after you look up Booker T. Washington, you go over to his wealthy friends and benefactors. And right here, his contacts included such diverse and well-known entrepreneurs and philanthropists as Andrew Carnegie, which I believe is a Freemason. But right here, it says John D. Rockefeller. And through all of these people, it says they donated large sums of money to agencies such as Genus and Slater funds. As a result, countless small rural schools were established through Washington's efforts under programs that continued many years after his death. Along with rich white men, the black communities helped their communities directly by donating time, money, and labor to schools to match the funds required. Right here it says a representative case of an exceptional relationship was Washington's friendship with millionaire industrialist and financier Henry H. Rogers. Says that Rogers was a self-made man who had risen from a modest working class family to become a principal officer of Standard Oil. Pause. Now in previous video, I showed where basically Indians were ran up off of their land so that the oil and other natural resources could be stolen. So reference those facts with the fact that this oil pioneer became friends with Booker T. Washington after one of Washington's speeches, and then had been quietly funding operations of 65 small country schools for African Americans and had given substantial sums of money to support Tuskegee and Hampton Institutes. He also noted that Rogers had encouraged programs with matching funds requirements so the recipients had a stake in the outcome. So down here it says after the federal troops left in 1877 after the Reconstruction era, many paramilitary groups worked to suppress black voting by violence. From 1890 to 1908, southern states disenfranchised most blacks and many poor whites through constitutional amendments and statutes that created barriers to voter registration and voting. It says they passed laws establishing racial segregation and Jim Crow. Now, they said they started to disenfranchise blacks in the southern states in 1890. But when you look at the historical population by race in Virginia, where Booker T. Washington was born at, you see that in 1860 they had 55,000 free blacks in the state. In 1820 they had 36,000 free blacks in the state. But however, no schools were being built to teach those free blacks until 1868 in Virginia. Now I'll leave you with this right here. On Wikipedia, there's lists of Freemasons. Right here, there's a list from last names E through Z. When you go down to the W's, you see Booker T. Washington right here as a Freemason. Through the history books, which has all been a lie. So therefore, if it's a lie, then what's the truth? If it's a lie, then what's the